All right, here with Coach Mike Bianco, head coach, 21 seasons at Ole Miss. I just looked, I think 19 regionals, but ABCA Tech Coach of the Year. And Coach, thanks for jumping on. I know it's busy right now for you, so I appreciate this.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And I always ask this. I mean, do you feel much different since winning it?
No different. No different. I've been asked that question a lot of different ways, and has it hit you yet? And and you Ryan, I think probably my story as well as anybody that we got back here on the 28th, which was a Monday mid afternoon, and had a celebration, people meeting us here, and we did the Walk of Champions, and what a neat event. And then on the docket was really that day to travel to Cary, North Carolina, to coach the USA Collegiate National Team. Fortunately, Eric Campbell, the general manager, said, "Hey, we'll give you a couple days." And so, within the next 36 hours or so, tried to sit with, Carl Lafferty, Mike Clement, my assistant coaches, and try to kind of figure out the summer, and with me not here. And so, some things that weren't planned that we tried to speed up. And then, of course, kind of, finished it up with a parade through Oxford and a celebration here at the stadium, and then jumped on a plane. And so the last, month, I've been away. And so I spent about 48 hours here, and then about 3 weeks or so with Team USA. So, I haven't had a lot of time to reflect on it a lot. I've spoken. I haven't done a lot of interviews, believe it or not. And so it's been a whirlwind, to say the least.
Yeah, I had a chance to see and Cary briefly. I was surprised you got there that quick, by the way, because I was there the day before and you weren't there, and then I see you walk in and you jump right into bunt coverages, which is something you don't think about with the college national team. It's like those are the small things that you have to try to get instilled before you start playing. So, I mean, how was that getting there and then jumping right into it?
Well, part of it, and I tease, Eric said, to take as much time as you needed. But, the two things I think that were on my mind, one probably more important was I had to get my players there. I felt where we were at this, training camp, or going to this training camp for the USA national team, and Jacob Gonzalez, Hunter Elliott, and Mason Nichols were all invites. They were part of that 50 kids that were getting invited to Cary to really try out for a week. To where we whittled it down to 26 guys that would be the Team USA that would compete internationally over in the Netherlands in a hunkball tournament. And so, number one, that was on my mind. I need to get those guys there. It's unfair. And they may not even want to go. They may want to stay a little bit for the celebration, but we need to get them there. So, one, they could experience that. And two, so they could make the team, so they could put their best foot forward. And then, the other thing was the commitment that I made. I think a lot of people thought, hey, if you win a national championship, that's what you do. You become the USA coach. No, it's not. It's, it was a commitment that I made with USA Baseball some 8 months ago, back in, late 2021, to be the manager. And so they just happened to coincide. And so, a commitment that, was an honor, and one that, I wanted to keep. And so, getting there quickly, you say about the bunt defenses, when you talk about USA Baseball, yes, it's the best players our country has to offer, amateur baseball players. But I think the angst that we all had, the coaches, and Cliff Godwin and Josh Holliday and Scott Brown, was how do we make this a team? Not just an all-star team, of great players, but we got to be able to play and compete in a tournament, not just a one-game showcase. And so some of that is doing a lot of the little things, right? A lot of the fundamentals.
When you're divvying up responsibilities with your staff at Ole Miss for this summer, what was the most, obviously recruiting is the most important thing, but then is it camp below that?
I think it's hard to prioritize. I think we try to not make lists like that. We try to make lists this way, because the little things matter. And so, yes, camp matters, recruiting matters. I think that the exit meetings, matter. some of the things that maybe don't fall on that first long line, things that, can wait till, I got back in late July, stuff, administratively, I think, through the athletic department and some of those types of things, we pushed to the back burner, but we tried to look up. Certainly, some of it's just personnel. Some of it's, and I'm talking about, the coaches. Some of it's, talking to the administration about bonuses and raises and trying to check those boxes, because those are important, right? People want to get paid and people are worried about their future. And I had that as well to I think, on my mind, where, we wanted to make sure that these coaches that had worked so hard for this, they didn't deserve. I took on the commitment to coach, the USA national team. They don't need to get their lives and their futures postponed a month, for me. So, a lot of those little administrative things that I think as a coach, whenever your season ends, and let's face it, as you mentioned, 22 years, but 21 true years without counting COVID. So 21 real seasons that our season ended before the national championship game. And most teams do, right? Only 2 play in the national championship game. And so usually you have a few weeks, even if you're coaching a USA national team, usually you have 2 or 3 weeks. And the way we were playing early in the season, I thought I was going to have a lot of time. And I say that laughingly now, but that was true. Yeah. You look at our staff, I thought those guys would be playing. I was going to be the one that I was already in my mind thinking, I may go a day early. I may not go on the 28th. I may go on the 26th or 27th. And whoever's not in Omaha can join me there where we can start some of this. And because by then I would have had a few weeks to tie up all the exit meetings and all the contracts and all the camp stuff and all the recruiting and all those things that you do at the end of the year to try to flip that page.
How nice is it to have Mike and Carl with you? I mean, you guys have been together for a long time. That's got to be comforting, doesn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. And, I was worried. I coached the USA national team. I was the pitching coach in 2013 and really had talked to Mike Gasky and Eric Campbell probably for a decade before then, where I wasn't ready to take on that responsibility. I kind of shied away from it early in my career just because my personal children were so young. I got here at Ole Miss when I was 33. And so we had young children, and I wasn't ready to just and the tour at that time, the USA Baseball Tour, was much longer, and I wasn't ready to commit the time. I was a young coach and figured, I would be able to do it, later in my career. And fortunately I was. But and part of that is not just personally, but your program. Can you put your program down for, several weeks and hand it over to your assistants? And none better, to hand it over to than, Mike Clement and Carl Lafferty. And they're tremendous assistant coaches, but are going to be great head coaches whenever they choose. They could have done that by now. Fortunately, they've chose to stay at Ole Miss, at the present moment. But I had no reservations. I knew from a recruiting standpoint, I knew from kind of, as I'd said, I guess using the metaphor, flipping the page or turning the page to the next season, they could help me do that or do it on their own, quite efficiently.
Second go around Omaha, did you adjust the team schedule at all from the first time you were in Omaha?
Not much. One of the things that I learned with my years with Coach Burtman was, I was part of the system, and it's amazing. We were talking. They're writing a book about the national championship. And I sat, with an hour and a half, 2 hours yesterday with Chase Parham, who's writing the book, here in Oxford, in one of a similar question. And one of the things that was amazing to me, now again, I'm old, and this was the 90s, so this is 30 years ago. But going through, going to Omaha in the 90s with LSU and Skip Bertman, one of the reasons I think they had so much success, obviously, is, probably the greatest college baseball coach ever. We had great players and great teams, but I was there for 5 years. We went to the College World Series 4 times and won 3 national championships. So perfect timing, right? I caught it perfect. But the thing that, people are astonished, we stayed in the same hotel. See, this was before that, they would give you hotels, but you didn't have to stay there. So we stayed in the same Embassy Suites as a player in 1989 and as a coach in 93, 94, 96, and 97. As a coach in those 4 years, I stayed in the exact same room, the exact room. Second floor, I don't know the number 213, but it was right next to the stairwell. And the reason that was my room is because I didn't have to get on the elevator. I could walk up and down the stairs, one level. And Bertman stayed in the same room. All the assistant coaches stayed in the same rooms. And so it was a machine, how you packed your bag, so this is pre, laptop and cell phones, in the 90s. And so, we packed a pencil sharpener. We packed, certain notebooks and certain things that because you planned on being there for 10 days. And they usually were there for 10 days and he had tremendous success. But the point is he had a system for everything and a plan for everything. And it wasn't a bowl game. This was, you were there to win a tournament like you are regional or super regional conference tournament. We were there to win it. And in the structure that we had. And it sounds almost like, wow, man, you want to enjoy it. Well, it's hard to enjoy if you're just shooting from the hip, and it's kind of, and the players sometimes feel that as well. And so I think part of that system was to make sure that you were able to accomplish what you need to accomplish, but also give them the free time, because there's a lot of downtime, as you know, right? There's not many tournaments where you play and have a day off, and so you got to be able to utilize that downtime to where they can still feel where they're sharing time with their family and friends, but you're still getting business done.
And those are peak performance hacks. You lay out the routine the same because you kind of get primed to go out and perform at your best. And those LSU teams were built for that format back in those days. A different format back in the 90s. And it seemed like LSU would just bludgeon teams at the end of that tournament because their offense was so good. And the format now in Omaha is much different, where you can roll it out with 2 or 3 pitchers and get hot and have a chance to win that tournament now, which is much different than the 90s tournament.
Right. And, and you're exactly right. And then probably the biggest difference, is just the championship series, and that's, in all those tournaments in the 90s. And that was really done just because of the TV contract. CBS bought the championship game that they just didn't want. They wanted one game. They didn't want, because the old College World Series, I say old, when I was growing up in the 80s, the old College World Series that you'd see on ESPN, it was just your regular 8-team double elimination tournament. Yeah. And so, you had a winner's bracket and a loser's bracket champion, and, you had the final and then the game, right? The if necessary game. And so CBS never really wanted that. You don't want, hey, this might be the championship. They wanted one game winner take all. So that's where you got the 2 14 brackets that and then eventually ESPN, college baseball continues to grow, and ESPN, bought the College World Series and changed it to a 3-game formats. But part of that offense is the stadium. Yes. Back in the 90s, you're playing in Rosenblatt, where the stadium was turned a different way and the wind was blowing out, and the bats were different. And Omaha, unfortunately, the College World Series and Omaha, I think early on, when they opened up the original TD Ameritrade and now Charles Schwab Field, they took a lot of heat that wasn't fair, about the stadium, because when they were in the beginning to build that stadium, people didn't want all the home runs. They didn't want the 21-18 USC versus Arizona State championship game. And so people were trying to find out, how do we end all of this? How do we end all the homers? Is it the bats? Is in the championship in the World Series? Is it Rosenblatt? And so nobody was worried about building a field that was too big, right? Nobody was worried about building a stadium that wasn't going to be conducive to home runs. If anything, we want to knock the home runs down. And so it became, the perfect storm. They built this stadium, and probably unknowing to them that the NCAA was changing the bats at the same time. And so, the BB-Core bat came in, the same.
The lead pipes. Those were lead pipes when they first came out with them.
Yeah,
it's much better. Technology is much better.
It was the same year, wasn't it? 2011. Yeah. So this first year, of the new stadium in the first year of the Bats, and so it was the perfect storm of not a lot of offense in Omaha.
What is it about a team getting hot down the stretch and having to play your way in? I mean, you get to the halfway point, and obviously you get swept by Alabama, but you guys start to get going. What is it about a team that has to play their way in down the stretch?
I think the short answer that I probably didn't realize until the end was, people talk about the end of our regular season, and we played really well. They use the low water mark of 7-14 in the drive back from Fayetteville, where we could have won all 3 games, and we won one. We won on Friday night, but it was the 3rd week in a row that we had won on Friday night in the SEC, which is tough to do, but lost the next 2 games, right? And so 3 weeks in a row, you're talking about 6 games. And when you look at those 6 games, we could have won any. Not that we should have won, but we could have won. It wasn't like, hey, we lost 9-1. We were in every one of those games, and we just didn't do enough. And, some of it was our own undoing. Some of it was the other teams and life in the SEC. Welcome to the SEC. If you don't play well, you lose in our league, right? And some of it, I think, is just baseball fortune. And we just didn't have enough of that going for us. And we played pretty well for a few weeks in a row against Mississippi State, against South Carolina, against Arkansas, but didn't have a lot to show for it. And so that was really tough. But then we played really well at the end, put ourselves in position. But in that fight back, and the reason I tell you all that, and people know that, is, when we started playing well, we were so far behind that we were going, it was trying to run up this mountain that even if we played well, even if we won a game, we're trying to catch people. We're at 7-14, and we're trying to catch people that are 14-7. I mean, that's what Arkansas was when we left. I want to say they were 14-7. We were 7-14. We only have 9 games left. And so it was a pretty steep hill that we were trying to climb. So anyway, now you fast forward to Memorial Day and us getting into the tournament. I think I've made this comment before. I don't remember a time in the 21 years of sitting in that room watching, the selection show on ESPN. I don't ever remember a time seeing the team that excited, that elated. Now, granted, there was years where we were hosting and they knew their name was going to pop up and they were just looking to see who they were going to play. But there's been other years that we weren't really sure or where we would go, or, we think we're in, but we're not going to host. Where are we going? This was the most elated, the most excited, the most genuine that I've ever seen those guys sit in that room. And when they got announced, and I tell you that because I didn't know how we would respond. I knew we were a good team, but would we play well? You never know. It's tournament baseball. We'll see what happens. And they played unbelievably well for the next month. And I say that because what happened was, in my opinion, we stopped having to go uphill, and now you're postseason, and now everybody's 0-0. And so now it's flat ground again. And so if you can play at that high level, man, it's almost like you're running downhill now, right? Because you're so much, so much of that has been running uphill for the last month or so. Man, if we can just get the level playing ground, and we did, and fortunately we played well.
You talked about the LSU teams. You're bringing pencil sharpeners. There's no technology. How do you keep your players and staff away from the outside noise now that is technology? Because you're going to see it on the phone. You're going to see it on an iPad. How do you keep everybody away from that noise?
You can't. It's got to be a choice. And if you're referring to the middle of the season when we're not playing well, it's tough today. It really is. And it's tough when you're talking to young people that are 18 to 22 years old to tell them to put something down that it's part of their lives. It's easier for me. It's easier for the coaches. I didn't always have a cell phone. When I was their age, I didn't have a cell phone. And so even though that it's part of my life now and my life, would be much different without it, I could live without it. And I think most people my age and even younger, could manage life without it. I think it would be hard for young people to live without that, computer, camera, phone in their pocket, 24/7. And so that's I don't know if that's the answer, but the answer is to continue to explain to them, that it's not helping them, not in what their goals are. And we make a comment a lot. Hey, be careful when you're playing well and things are going well. If you're reading all of that stuff now and you're believing it, then when it goes bad, then you're going to read it and believe it then, and it's not going to be helpful. And so, try to, we use another comment or metaphor that, if it's not in our dugout, let's not worry about it. And so we're gonna believe, and we're gonna trust, and we're gonna push for the guys in our dugout. Outside our dugout, hey, we can smile, we can shake hands, and we can sign autographs, and we can do all of that. But what we care about is the people in our dugout, and that's the most important thing. And and I think it's even tougher in a program like ours, where you have over 8,500 season tickets. Every weekend when you step out, you have 10 to 12,000 baseball fans. There's only a handful of programs in the country that have that fan base, that expectation, and so when you're not having success, it's tough. But it's part of the gig, and as I told him, when it gets tough, you wanted this, you wanted to be here. You could have played somewhere where nobody cared. Well, they care here. And they care both ways, and they want you to win, and then put it in perspective. And then probably the last comment that we say a lot is, don't take advice, or don't let somebody hurt your feelings or get you down that you wouldn't take advice from, in your hitting or in your pitching or in your everyday life. Why are you going to let that guy, beat you up or make you feel differently? And one of the guys that probably put it in, the best terms, Chris Coughlin, spoke to the team really at the beginning of our term. And I think had a lot to do with it because, sometimes perspective is great. And one of the comments that Chris challenged the guys, he said, what's the goal? What's the most important? And, you heard different things in the room from, win this pitch, right? Present moment, mental game type stuff, to guys say, hey, just get to postseason, right? And, he basically said, shame on you. At Ole Miss, when you're walking to the dugout, and it's been like this for 22 years, the goals are listed: win 40 regular season games, win the Southeastern Conference Championship, host a regional, host a super regional, get to Omaha, win a national championship. Those have been the goals in basically that order. And he says every team before you has accomplished those goals or one of those goals or whatever. They've been to postseason. Matter of fact, just getting to postseason is not even on that board. Right? It's win 40 regular season games, and it says host a regional. It doesn't say make a regional. And so he said, shame on you that, what you may not be able to win 40 games. And I don't think you can win the Southeastern Conference. And I'm not sure that you can host. But the only goal left that you can accomplish is win the national championship. Is that possible? And they all said yes. And so until that's not a goal, until that's not possible anymore, I don't know why you would take the most important, because that's the most important thing anyway. Nobody really cares about the other ones if you accomplish that one, which is true. We didn't do any of those other until the very end. We got to 40 games, but it's 40 regular season games. So we didn't even get to that. We didn't get any of the other goals, but we got the biggest one. And really it made us think that, like, yeah, why would you change your goals? And that happens. And that happens a lot because of the outside noise, right? Yeah, it happens because of the media. It happens that you're not in the pundits, 64 who's going to regionals and who the host sites is, as they go across all the websites every week, the last 2 months of the season. And so, that I think that really resonated with our guys, and it was a different perspective.
Do you guys win it if Tim Elko decides to not come back?
No, I don't think we win it.
I mean, you got to have a guy like that to lead, right? A veteran presence probably helps keep some of the noise out of there too, keeps everybody centered in on what you're trying to do.
Without a doubt. I mean, obviously, you're talking about a guy that broke the home run record. So, physically and statistically, yeah, I don't think we can win it. But just the other part is, one of the things that I've said over and over again is we don't get out of that hole. I think, there's times in the season, and we've never been 7-14, 21 years. That's the only time we've ever been that low. And there's teams when you get to that point, you go in a lot of different directions. Well, usually two directions, right? You're either going up, you're at the all-time low, you're either going to go up or you're going to go even lower. And I never during last year's season ever looked in the dugout, ever looked at them in practice in a team meeting and felt that we weren't going to win, or they didn't believe that we weren't going to win. And that's important. You hear about that. Hey, they lost the team, or you can see it in their face. They just don't have any fight anymore. I don't think that was the case ever with us. Now we were playing some bad baseball at times, and we weren't having success. But I don't think there was ever a time. And that credit Tim Elko, and along with Tim, other guys like Justin Bench and Kevin Graham and Derek Diamond and Max Chofie, and guys that I thought just, remained very consistent in their belief in themselves and their belief in their teammates. And that's the only way that you can get out of that hole. And so when you ask the question, I think most people say, yeah, duh, a guy hit 20-something home runs and, he bats fourth in the lineup, and yeah, they don't make it to Omaha or win a national championship. But probably more importantly, it's Tim Elko and his leadership and leadership of other guys in that dugout that got us through.
He had almost like a Kevin Millar, Boston Red Sox feel, like down the stretch for you guys, being out front on social media. Like that's what he reminded me of, was like Kevin Millar with the Red Sox when they're down to the Yankees. And he was like, no, we're not done yet. Like, we're going to keep going here. And I get goosebumps thinking about that, because you need somebody like that in the foxhole that's going to kind of carry everybody with them.
Right. And somebody that's not, necessarily polarizing. He was the face of the program before the season started, right? They were going to build the statue last year, right, when he was playing
with one leg.
So he was a guy that could say that. He was the guy that could look into the camera real close and say, "Don't let the reps get hot," right? Yep. He was the guy, and people, I think appreciated that, and his calm presence, his confidence and his belief, I think permeated, throughout the team. And then beyond that, as we started to have success, I think even into, the fan base.
Yeah. I thought this was the most wide open Omaha field we had in a while. I mean, did you feel that going in? Or, I mean, every team that makes it's good, but did you feel like you had a legitimate shot because it was a wide open field?
Yeah, we always felt we were good.
Yeah.
And I don't mean it in an egotistical way. I mean, we weren't a team, it looked like we came, for most people, and even I think your average college baseball fan, I think, it probably looks like, hey man, what a Cinderella story. But I don't think we ever felt like Cinderella. You're talking about a team that at the beginning of the season returned 8 of the starting 9 off a team that had the best offense in the SEC the year before, that was one game from getting to Omaha the year before, that had been to 3 super regionals in a row, and
16-1 the COVID year. You guys were 16-1 the COVID year.
So you're talking about, so at the start of the season we were projected to be one of those teams, and played like it through the first month of the season, and till we started conference play, we were ranked number 1 in the country in a lot of polls. The first week of conference play, we beat Auburn on the road and went to, I think, a unanimous number 1 the next week, and then got beat up badly by Tennessee, like everybody. And just ran into a buzzsaw, and that kind of sent us into a tailspin. We won the next weekend, I think, at Kentucky, and then came back and got swept by a really hot, Alabama team, and we just really, couldn't figure it out. We just played very inconsistently, for about a month. So I say all that because I think we didn't feel like that Cinderella team. We didn't feel like a team from rags to riches. We were a team that was really good, a team that was ranked number 1, a team that, and so we just needed a fighting chance. We needed to get back onto that level playing field again.
Longest tenured coach in the SEC in 2022. Will we ever see McNeese head coach go to Ole Miss in the climate that we're in right now?
I don't know. And part of me is sad of that. The normal path that it used to be isn't probably as prevalent anymore, right? So it was, go be a graduate. Well, certainly there's not even graduate assistants anymore. So when you look at my path, I'm young enough or old enough to be like the last graduate assistant, the last restricted earnings coach. That was my path. And unfortunate, because if those things weren't available, I don't know if I even get into this profession. But, people that know me know my story. I started off as a graduate assistant for Jim Wells at Northwestern State in the fall of 1990, and Greg Sankey, our commissioner, was there. So we were neighbors, and we lived in the same apartment complex, 1990, 91, 92, there at in Natchitoches, Louisiana. Then the rule changed in 92 with the restricted earnings coach. And so that's really the door that opened. I don't know if I get to LSU or get back to LSU. I was a player there. I don't know if I get back as a coach if that legislation wasn't, intact for those 2 or 3 years. So I go there, I catch it at perfect timing. And then at 30 years old, become the head coach at McNeese State, and took a pay cut, And so now it's harder for those guys because fortunately baseball's grown, but the assistant coaches make so much money now at these big programs, the Power 5 programs. It's hard for them to leave and go to a school like that. And so you see more of the Tim Corbins, that leave as an assistant and go to Vanderbilt, or Kevin O'Sullivan or Tony Vitello. You see more of that. Then you see, the normal path of GA, assistant coach, then go down to the mid-major, be a head coach, kind of cut your teeth that way and have success. Then there's still those guys. They're still out there, and but you don't see it as much anymore. And but it's things change over time.
Does Jim Wells get enough credit for what he did over the course of his career?
Absolutely
he
not.
Doesn't, does he?
It's not even close.
Nobody talks about him.
No.
I was at the '97 World Series at Alabama. He was such a good coach, so good.
Yeah, and it's a shame because it was his career ended just when social media started to really blossom. I know they probably had MySpace or some other stuff. Back, I think his last year at Alabama was 2009. And so I tell this story a lot. When he went to Northwestern State, he took over a program that had 10 consecutive losing seasons. 10.
Yep.
10 years in a row that they lost more than they won. And he won like 38 games his first year. I think in 5 years, he won 3 Southland Conference championships, and then became the head coach at the University of Alabama in 95, I believe. And he was there from 95 to 2009, maybe 15 years or 14 years. Became the all-time winningest coach at the University of Alabama, took them to Omaha several times. Played the national championship in 97, where unfortunately he ran into a very hot and very talented LSU team. But just a tremendous coach. And I mean, just a great coach, a guy that really could coach anything, could coach hitters, could coach pitchers. He part of the reason that Alabama, I think, got into the baseball business. And what I mean by that is they were like a lot of schools in the Southeastern Conference that were the second tier teams, if you will. Then again, for Alabama fans, I'm not trying to, this is back in the 90s and the 80s. They'd built a little stadium there, but Wells was the one that really got it going, hosting regionals where they expanded that old stadium to be able to, put the people in that wanted tickets, in Tuscaloosa. And, that it changed baseball forever there. And so, yeah, I agree that not even close does he get the credit that he deserves and all the success that he's had.
Was there much difference between how Coach Wells and Coach Bertman ran things?
Yeah, a lot different.
What were the differences?
I think the biggest thing is, probably the trait that people don't talk about Bertman is what a great coach he was. What a great, for lack of a better way of saying it, X's and O's, how he understood, how he managed a game, what a great pitching coach he was. That probably gets underrated. Maybe not early in his career. He was the USA pitching coach in '88 when they, first Olympic baseball team with,
they played at Bosse Field. Coach Bergman was coaching that team. They were at Bosse Field.
Yeah, and Ron Polk was, the third base coach. I mean, legendary guys, right? That, when you look back at it, that coached the first Olympic team in 1988, over in Seoul. Was it Seoul? And so, anyway, I think people, when they talk about Bertman now, which I understand and it's true, his system, when he talks about his system, the great thing about his system is, like, we use here at Ole Miss in 2022, the same bunt defenses that we had in 1988. Exact same. The same signals, right? Some, 30-something years ago. But one of the things that always he was proud of and was great at, and probably the most underrated thing, was he was able to adapt. And so in the 90s, when strength and conditioning became, more important to our game of baseball, you look at the LSU teams, they were more physical. They were in the weight room. He caught on that way. Ken Ravizza, when I was there as an assistant, came twice in 95 and 96 and spoke to the team, about the mental game and the process before anybody even heard of the process, right? I mean, this is 1995, and so Bertman was always on the cutting edge of the new things. Like, he would have just ate up the analytics and, all the different statistics that you get, and how the game is thought of now.
We used Schwenke's blast system at Evansville. Yeah. I mean, that was one of our hitting handouts, was Coach Schwenke's blast system.
Yeah. And so he wasn't scared to try things. And a lot of people in his position are, and I am at times, when you're having success, let's not mess it up. Let's just keep it rolling. The reason he was so good is he was able to adapt and change with the times. And I say that because I think that's what, people will remember him by and should. Wells was the ultimate coach. Wells was the guy that, loved to just coach. Bertman was the guy that, he took from Frazier, and he learned from Frazier how to go give the speeches, how to go get the people into the stands, how to do that, how to sell the program. I can teach a Mike Bianco or Smoke Laval to teach the pitchers or the hitting, or Jim Schwanke to teach the hitters. I can get somebody to do that, but I need to sell the program. Wells was the guy that loved to coach, which is the reason we all get into it, right? He wanted to develop pitchers, he wanted to develop hitters, and so he was one of the greatest X's and O's coaches I've ever been around.
There is so much new stuff out, but you said you still use old bunt defenses, but how do you know along the way, because we have so many new shiny things, how do you know when to maybe implement something new that's out there? Because the kids are around the new shiny stuff, so how do you know when to implement new stuff?
And I think it's a juggle, and it's a juggle that I struggle with, because the coaches in our office know, hey, listen, I don't need a $15,000 paperweight in the back of our hitting complex, right? Don't just go buy something because we have the money and we're never going to use it. It's a nice toy. It was pretty when the guy came, but it just doesn't help us get better. So they know, Mike Clement, Carl Lafferty, they know that if there's something they want, they have to sell me on it. We have to. How's this going to help us? And and I think that's a juggle, where, we want to be state of the art. We don't want to be behind, but we don't want to be full of crap either, and I hate that. I hate that, hey, we're going to spend a lot of money, but we're not going to use this stuff. Or we have these, and to be honest with you, even in saying that, we had TrackMan for years, right? TrackMan, professional baseball came, Major League Baseball came. They put a TrackMan. Why? Because they wanted it, not for us. You guys can have it. We had all this data and this information, but we really didn't know how to use it until 2018. I think it was maybe 17, 18. We hired a young man by the name of Chris Godoris. And Chris graduated from Bentley University in economics. and worked in pro baseball, and never really played a little high school baseball. Loved baseball though. Worked with the Mets and the Phillies organization, but he really understood. Because analytics is so broad, right? It's from using statistics like OPS and WHIP and those new generational statistics, but they're also to spin rate, tilt of fastball, and it's extension and relative velocity and all these other things that TrackMan and other machines like that allow you to understand why people are successful, why people aren't, why these guys both, when we used to sit there with a radar gun and this guy throws 91 and this guy throws 91, but this guy gets hit all the time and this guy never gets hit. Yep. And it helps you understand the fastball, it's hard to pick up and it's sneaky fast and it rises and all these little things that we've said for years, but we didn't really know. Now there's data that supports that. And so we needed somebody to get us over the hump, and Chris has done that. And the other part of the hump is Major League Baseball, I think, loved the TrackMan stuff at the beginning, the TrackMan data and all the things that I was just talking about, because it allowed them to discover the next Clayton Kershaw. Yes. Instead of some scout saying, hey, he's got a breaking ball like Clayton Kershaw, now you got the data to prove it, not just the eye, right? For the longest time, you had to trust the eye. Now you got this guy that says it spins like this, it breaks like this, it's got this much depth to it, and this much vertical break, this much horizontal break. Yada, yada, yada.
And they have more coverage now, too, because there's TrackMan everywhere. So
that's why they put it up.
There's more coverage. You don't have to have people in the stadium to get that information. You're getting that information.
That's why they put it in Lake Point in Atlanta, Georgia. That's why they would pay to put it at Ole Miss and other parts.
It's cheaper to do that than it is to send a million scouts out to watch games.
100%. 100%. So they were smart in that. Yes. But my point being, they wanted to be able to know who the next Clayton Kershaw was. Well, we're not privy to that information. Yeah. So it's not going to help us recruiting necessarily, at least back then, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. So how is that information going to help us? How do we get it to help us develop the next pitcher? How do we? And so we needed to bring somebody on board that says Will Etheridge is good, but his four-seam fastball is no good, and this is why. And so here's this scatter plot. This is what the four-seam does, but this is what his two-seam does. And so, you're talking about how do you get, the guys, the young people are all into the bells and whistles. Well, part of it is getting the buy-in, being able to show them because they understand it, because they've trained with a Rapsodo or they trained with some other device. So they understand vertical break, or at least they think they do, or they understand the horizontal break. And so when you start to explain it and educate the players and saying, this is what your ball's doing, and that's not good. It's very average. That's why you get hit a lot. But this is what your two-seam ball does. And it's not very average, very different. And this is why the batting average against that pitch is 220, but the batting average against this other pitch is 320. And so instead of just saying, hey, I was taught to throw a four-seam ball and a two-seam ball, maybe we shouldn't throw the four-seam ball anymore. And so it helps you get buy-in because you have data that backs it up. Or, hey, we want to change the tilt of your fastball a little bit to get a little more ride. Or, hey, we need to, your breaking ball, it looks pretty, but statistically it gets hit. And you throw it in the strike zone. So we need to change the breaking ball. We need to change the shape, or maybe we need to go to a slider. And so those things we were able to coach better. So it wasn't in the evaluation. It was in why they're here. How are we going to get them to get, how are we going to use this data to get us better? But now I think Major League Baseball, that's why you see some college coaches getting hired, because the college coaches have learned to use it in a different way. And so a lot of the professional coaches, they don't know that information, and they've never been taught that information. And so it's a lot easier to hire some of these college coaches because they know how to use that information to, I think, develop pitchers.
Yeah. And the next gen is Hawkeye, because now we're getting more information from Hawkeye on defensive efficiency, routes, how the barrel actually moves. There was a really good article Major League Baseball came out with a couple weeks ago talking about the pre-movement with the barrel. So we're getting more information. Do you feel like the offense has finally started to catch up to the pitching a little bit?
Yes, and just because of all the technology, from video to when you start to when you just look at the scouting reports and you just look at them from just literally, and I say 5 years ago, and I know to young people that sounds like a long time ago, right? To you and I, it was a blink of an eye, right? But, and the reason I use 5 years ago is because that's, when Tim Elko was entering the program. So when you look at 4 or 5 years, that's just, one recruiting class through. So when you look 4 or 5 years ago, and when we used to sit down with a scouting report and go over, Carter Holton from Vanderbilt, that report looks a lot different now.
And Synergy, 5 years ago, not as many teams were using Synergy.
I don't know if they had Synergy.
Everybody has Synergy now, so way easier for a scouting report purpose. Okay, I need video on this guy. We can actually get video on everybody now. So if you want to actually spend the time to do it, you can do it.
Yeah, and so because of things like Synergy, because of video, because of the data, so you cannot just say, hey, he's got a good fastball, but hey, the reason he has a good fastball is it's got a lot of vertical break, and we're going to, there's a lot of swings and misses up in the zone, and you can show them the video. And so there's now again, somebody's still got to hit it, but I really believe that, yes, from a hitting standpoint, I don't know why. And it probably, my guess is, why was pitching ahead of hitting? I think because of Major League Baseball, they went that route, right? They're pitching is the number one most important position, and so when you're drafting guys and when you're looking at evaluating and all those, you need to evaluate those guys first. You need to draft the best pitchers. So I like a lot of things because they're the best in our sport and have the most money and the most technology. A lot of that trickles down, and I think that's why pitching went first. But they also realized that, hey, they're paying a lot of money for the hitters too, and we got to hit those pitchers. So we got to invest some time and technology in that as well.
Over the course of your career, what have you developed to help you handle the ups and downs during a season?
Wow. You didn't segue anyway to that. You just jumped right over to that. Probably, and this was asked a little bit by Chase the other day, I think like anybody, as you do it long enough and you gain experience, and as the older you get, you just learn things through time. And, and as we're going through our tough time this year, you have to handle it, and you have to be able to understand and trust and believe in what you do. And we've had a lot of success here over the last 21 seasons, and so I think you go back to some of those moments and you reflect and you explain, and it allows you, if this was and I said this I think to somebody the other day, if we were 7-14 my first or second year, I don't know if we would have handled it the same way, and I know I wouldn't have, but I think, time and experience does that for you. And, it's a good educator. And,
is your self-talk better? The talk in between your ears, that conversation you're having with yourself?
I think that's exactly what I'm talking about, where, I remember Coach Bertman saying it. I remember Ray Tanner saying it, and a lot of guys that I respect that, as they got older, they learned to not let as many things bother them. And some of that is, I think, you're doing it on purpose, hey, just take a deep breath. It's, we're going to be all right. It's not going to blow up. We're going to be fine. Whatever that is, if it's something in an office or something that just happened in a game where, as young, fiery coaches, I think, we all are, emotionally attached so much that as time goes on, it's, everybody says, parenting, right? So if you have children, my oldest son, laughs how I parent my youngest daughter, right? right? It's like, well, you learn over time, right? You learn what works and what doesn't work. And I think it's like that in coaching. If it's running a business, if it's parenting, or if it's coaching a baseball team, I think there's nothing like experience.
How neat was it to be at LSU for senior day?
Terrific. My wife, there's a video of me afterwards where I got pretty emotional, and she asked me. It took her about 24 hours to get enough guts to ask me. She goes, "Why were you so emotional?" And the truth is, I missed so much of his stuff, and I felt guilty, because I'm in another uniform. We're at this place. This is, and is this the right time? And I think part of that was my own guilt getting to me, that, how unfair, this is his moment. And it was stupid to feel guilty because, it was stupid to feel insecure in those moments because
it's a once in a lifetime experience.
At the end of the
once
day,
in a lifetime.
I loved it, and I felt so at ease and so happy that I was there. And I think I felt guilty that for even a second, I was like, man, I'm going to be in another uniform. Is he going to be embarrassed? Is there going to be some idiot in the stands that's, tweeting something out? For a moment, I wasn't doing what I wasn't practicing what I preach, right? Where, it doesn't matter what they think. This is my son's moment. And, but anyway, back to your question, it was awesome. One of the neatest things, because I have missed so much. My boys, Ben and Drew, and Sam for part of it. I think they played for 3 state championships through their high school careers, and I was only there for one of them. And I've had 5 kids graduate. I think I've been to two graduations. I think I've missed probably every prom. There's so much that you miss, as they grow up in my profession, in our profession, that to be there for that moment, where every parent almost takes it for granted, right? It's senior day. We're going to do this. The stars had to align for me to be there, and, I wasn't there for Ben's, but fortunately I was there for Drew's.
How have you been able to manage that? I think all of us as college coaches, we understand we have a job to do, and if we want to keep our job, we have a job to do. So there are some things that we're going to have to say no to as a family. I mean, how do you balance that? I think that's the toughest juggling act as an elite college coach is that balancing act.
Well, I think they understand it. Your kids have lived it their whole lives. And so when you get to those moments in high school or college, I'm sure they would want us there all the time like the other parents. But I think they understand too, and there's a trade-off. There's some benefits that they got the best gear and hitting the nicest cages growing up, right? And so if that can't make all their college baseball games, I think they understand. With that being said, you got a job to do, and we're not the only profession that pulls us away from our families. There's people that are salesmen or physicians and different things. But I think what you're getting at, and one of the things, from a personal side, I don't do anything besides coach baseball. I mean, I don't hunt. I don't fish. I don't play golf. I live on a golf course and have a membership, and I haven't played golf. I haven't swung a golf club in probably 8-10 years. And because there's too much time involved in doing that. And so my fun thing is to be able to go watch my daughter play volleyball, or if I can run after our game and watch the last 4 innings of an Oxford high school baseball game and my kids playing, or now my oldest son, Michael's coaching at Grenada, academy, a high school, about 50 minutes here. If I can, on one of our days off or leave practice 15 minutes early and run down and watch one of his games, that's my golf. That's and people say, well, what about you and your personal time? I get more fun out of that than I would, getting in a deer stand or, going fishing. My wife and I bought a condo on the beach so we could have some of our time. We've owned it for 5 years, and we average about 10 to 11 days a year there. So that plan quite hasn't worked out, but hopefully as the kids continue to grow and stop playing baseball and start their own lives, or their grown-up lives, I should say, maybe we'll get to the beach a little more often.
Is Michael leaning on you for anything advice-wise, coaching-wise?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a better question for him, but, we talk a lot about it, a lot more. We talk a lot more baseball now than probably when he was a player. And that's neat. He's coaching football now. So, last night he came over for dinner and I said, tell me about the football gig, tell me, and so we hear the stories and, some of it's baseball wise, some of it's just, the drama that can be high school baseball, right? And I say drama, high school baseball, the drama that can be any team, right? It doesn't matter if it's high school, college, junior college. So yeah, I think, but he's got a good, support group. He coaches for BPA, Yalobusha Giants, here in Mississippi in the summertime. And so, he leans on Jared from BPA and Russ Pratt and a lot of great, I think people in his life that have helped him along the way get to where he is now.
How are you navigating the NIL process and transfer portal? I was going to ask, you're at the elite level. Do you have recommendations on it? I know it's kind of the wild, wild west right now, but
it is, and it's a shame. And a bit of advice that our commissioner, Greg Sankey, has shared with us that I think is, it's not. I think everybody needs to take is this is not going away.
Yeah.
So to think we're going to wake up one day and this is not there, is probably, really dumb, way to go about your business. I think we all hope that at some point there's they get, they can get their arms around it and have some type of, regulations and some type of, so people like you aren't calling it the wild, wild west, which I think is very appropriate right now.
Well, those of us lived this before, not with the NIL, but pre-transfer rule. Those of us that coached summer baseball a long time ago, we've been through this. We've been down this path. So you kind of knew what it was going to look like until they actually get some regulations for it. You knew that's what it was going to look like.
Yeah. So there's, you're talking about two different things that came into, Division I athletics and particularly now as we talk Division I baseball. So they're two different animals. And, so it's really two really different conversations. And I believe in the transfer portal. I thought they should have never done away with the one-time transfer rule. I think it would have, I like the rule the way it used to be, where a kid would have to get a release. I like where,
we're losing some growth moments right now. You're losing some growth moments with kids just going into the portal.
Yeah.
You're losing some conversations between players having to have an uncomfortable conversation or coaches having to have an uncomfortable conversation with somebody. You're losing some growth moments.
Without a doubt. And I think that's everybody's fear. And I didn't think it would happen this quickly in baseball. I thought the reason for it is not that our players are different than football or basketball, but the difference is our kids aren't on full scholarships.
Yes.
And so I thought, we only have 11.7 scholarships. And so I didn't think that you would see the marquee players leave, Power 5 programs. I thought that what it was going to really hurt was the mid-major, where you have a kid that's, the Sun Belt Player of the Year that, is he going to look to see, can he get to a bigger program, and play in a bigger conference, and no, again, not trying to throw the stones at the Sun Belt or Southland or any of that, but I thought that's where you would see the movement. I was a little surprised this early that many kids from major programs and good programs, programs that win, kids would go into the portal. So I don't know if any of us know where this is going or where it's going to land. So that's one thing. I'm a believer in that. I'm not a believer that you should make a kid stay at school X because he signed a scholarship. Heck, they're making kids that are walk-ons stay. the older rule, where, the parents, let's face it, 11.7 scholarships, the average scholarship in baseball is 33%. And so at Ole Miss, which were like most of our counterparts in the Southeastern Conference, out-of-state tuition and everything is $45,000. So if a kid's on a third of a scholarship, that means his parents are paying $30,000 for him to go to school at Ole Miss or LSU or Mississippi State or Alabama or whatever. If that kid wants to leave because he's not playing, or the kid that was supposed to get drafted didn't get drafted and showed up, and now that kid's – and the coach wants him to leave too, that's fine. If you want to leave, I'm okay with that. And everybody wants him to leave, but the NCAA says you can't. Yeah, I got a problem with that, right? And so that's why the one-time transfer, or now the transfer portal, I think is not a bad thing, right? So all those, hey, it's free agent. I think that'll slow down just through itself. I mean, at some point, people are going to realize that the in vogue thing isn't just to go into the portal. There's over 2,000 kids in the portal, and just like football, there won't be a landing spot for everybody. And I think people are going to get that. The NIL is really the thing that scares me. I think that's the thing that it scares everybody. Where does this end, and how do we wrap our brains around it, and how do we, and it's not that the kids shouldn't make money. I get it, especially in a sport where, parents are paying a lot of money for their kids to go to school. But even in our sport, kids are making well over what the cost of attendance is. And I can only imagine what happens in football and basketball. So how does this happen?
You knew last summer it was going to look like, when you just roll something out like that with no regulations on it.
But would it happen in baseball? That's where I don't know if any of us were prepared. You knew it would happen in football because football's king. What could a guy get, $500,000, $1 million or whatever? Yeah, I'm sure there's some booster out there that wants that running back or whatever, that they can make that happen. But I also think that baseball, money's finite, right? There's only so much money. And I think it will change as years come because, again, there's only so much money. And I think everybody wants to be all in now because they're worried about if we don't go in now. And when I say everybody, I'm talking about boosters or anybody, all the collectives, all this, we got to help our programs now. But at some point when somebody paid a running back $500,000 and the running back doesn't play.
Yes, no return on investment.
2 weeks later, he's in a portal and he's going to go play for your arch rival. Does that guy go, okay, don't worry about it. Who's the next running back? I'll write a $500,000 check to him. When did the people writing the checks go, whoa,
yes.
Let me sit back and, before when I gave you $500,000 and it became a weight room, right? That I was okay because I got my name on the weight room.
Yes.
Now I put my money on this kid.
Well, it's not like Little League. The sponsor's not going to get put on the back of the jersey like Little League.
Right. And so and that's just one part of it. And I say that tongue in cheek, but there's going to be stories like that. And then the other part of it that scares me is where the promises are going out to where they're not going to be able to live up to the promises. It's one thing to promise a guy a scholarship, but eventually he has to sign that contract. What happens when the kids are showing up and they're not getting paid what they said they were going to, or they were told they were going to get paid, or they're not playing well? Yeah. The kid comes, right, in baseball. Tim Elko wasn't Tim Elko his freshman year. Yeah. And so what happens when that, so there's a lot of that and so many more that I think we all worry about. So where is this going to land? I guess we're just going to have to.
Yeah, that's my fear too for the players, because now when that type of money is involved, it is more like professional sports where fans feel more invested, where they can actually say something, because whether a kid's on money or not, they just think every kid's getting NIL money, and that's not going to be the case for every kid. Where now fans are going to treat it more like professional sports, where they feel like, I can go after somebody.
I think we're already there. Yeah. I don't worry necessarily about that. But I hear what you're saying. But one of the things that I don't understand, and I'm not a legislator and I'm not a lawyer, But in professional sports, they do have rules. See, professional sports, they have rules where you can't become a free agent until 6 years, that you can't do some of these things if you're going to play Major League Baseball. Now, hey, it's America. I can do what I want. Yeah, but not in Major League Baseball. Yeah. So you can go to Japan and play if you want to, but you can't play. You can go to independently, but you can't. These are the rules that define Major League Baseball or the NFL. And so they have salary caps and they have different things. They just made this wide open to where they could do whatever they wanted. And I know that's being too general. I get that, hey, Derek Jeter could sign with Nike or Adidas or I understand that. But there's got to be some way that we can gather some, we like college athletics. I'm talking we as sports can come to agreement what's right and I'm not smart enough to figure that out. I'm gonna let the smart guys figure that out.
Yeah, I asked you when you and the boys were on the podcast with me about your pregame speeches because I love them. And, how much time are you spending on your pregame speeches?
You mean to
the team?
Well, actually saying them, are anywhere from a minute to 3 minutes. You don't want them to be too long. There's a couple of them that are really good that last a little longer than maybe I prefer, but they're good. So I do them anyway. I don't, continue to try to, find new ones. But one of the things that I do is I go through periodically, during the season, I pull stories out and I put them in a notebook. Some of them are about handling adversity. Some of them are about staying consistent. Some of them are about believing their teamsmanship or, putting a team away or whatever it is. And so I put those away. So, when we're playing Auburn and we're on the road, I can pull out the appropriate, story. And then when I'm done, I put it in another folder in my briefcase. So I keep all the stories from the season before that current season. So when I'm done, I put them in a notebook and it'll say 2022 stories and I'll have all the stories. And so I won't say any story in 2023 that I said in 2022.
Love it.
And so I will pull some stories maybe out of 2021 if I think they're really good, or the kids rank them. Then when we're done telling them, they go to Clement and they kind of rank the stories about how they're good. So sometimes I think a story is good and they don't like it, and sometimes vice versa. And so I start to find out which ones are the favorite. But, the hope is if you're Tim Elko and you've been here for 4 years, you may hear a story twice. But, remember, they're hearing 60, 70 stories a year. So, over the course of, 4 years, I mean, that's almost 300 stories. And so, so again, we try to every couple of years, but I got them in notebooks under my desk. So,
do you have a fail forward moment? Do you have something you thought was going to sidetrack you, but looking back now is one of the best things that happened to you?
Well, certainly when you just look at the season. I mean, when you just, you look at that and nobody really knows. I've said this a few times that I'm sure, listeners probably heard me say this, that, one of the cool things about this year, and you don't know it when you're going through adversity. So, at the beginning of the year, I may make the team read a book. And this year, we reread a book that, from 2014 called The Energy Bus, John Gordon. I'm sure you've heard of it. Great little book. We try to find a very small, big printed book so they'll actually read it. And so they read this book, The Energy Bus, and obviously it's about a man's life and, where he is. He's in a tough time in his life and, figures out about being positive and, a lot of lessons throughout the book. But anyway, so the mantra this year was to enjoy the ride. And so we give a shirt out at the end and, it says enjoy the ride on the shirt. And, but I also added something, enjoy the ride, good and bad, because there's good and bad with everything, and if you can enjoy the bad, then you're in the right spot. Right. And realize and start making it, instead of losing, you're learning, right? You're starting to find those moments to where, how is this going to help me, rather than just have a pity party for yourself. And so we've talked about that. We didn't know we were going to be 7-14, and so they didn't know when in December, when we talked about, good and bad, enjoy the ride, the good and the bad. They didn't realize that, like nobody does. But back to this team in this particular year, we got through our struggles, and to their credit, we get out, through the other side. And we've talked about it, about getting to level playing ground, and obviously, what a tremendous ending. And so, and I've said this to the team, and I've said it to the fans during the celebration. We had so many people show up in Omaha. There's 26,000 in the stadium. There had to be over 20,000. That's not an exaggeration.
A lot of Jello shots were bought.
18,000 something. Wow, at $5 a pop, right?
It's good marketing.
$100 grand of Jello
phenomenal
shot.
Marketing.
Yeah. So, and so my point being, we had so many people show up at Omaha. Most people would think, well, heck yeah, because you're there, in Omaha, you're going to win a national championship. And probably some of them thought that when they were driving up and trying to find a hotel and all of that. But I think the real reason that we had so many people there is because people fell in love with their story. I think people, I don't know if we would have had as much if we were 60-8, people like that, riches, rags, riches. I don't want to say rags to riches story, but, love people that, the underdog, the team that fell down and got back up. And, we've all been told in our lives, and we've either seen a quote, a parent, a coach, somebody's told us, hey, if you just believe in yourself, if you continue to work really hard, good things will happen to you eventually. Just got to hang in there, but you got to keep believing, you got to keep working hard. We've been in doctors' offices and we've seen posters that said something to that effect. Some of us believe that, some of us don't. Right. Unfortunately, right. Some of us think, no, it's who you know, not what you know. It's all about luck and good fortune. And, I've got this lot in life that I'll never be that person. And that's sad. But some of us believe in that, hey, if you believe in yourself, you work hard, good things will happen for you. These guys actually lived it. These guys actually lived it. Now, they didn't know they were living it when they went through it. Right. But there was a time where all they had was to believe in themselves and to work hard. They didn't have much after that, even in this great program with these great facilities. And, all they had was themselves, those guys in the dugout, that believed in themselves, believed in each other, and continued to work hard. And I think the fans, and even not just our fans, but fans around the country, when they started to hear the story, kind of got enamored with it and said, man, this is a really neat deal. And so, that's the fall forward. That's what I think about when I think about this season, how cool it was that, I got to be a part of that, to get to, they let me on the bus, for that ride. And it was a pretty neat ride.
Well, and beer shower, brought the beer shower to Chuck. Yeah. But that speaks to the tradition of your program. You talked about, people waiting. I always like preseason. You got fans 2 miles down the road trying to get their lawn chair spots in the outfield. It's got to be gratifying for you. You've built an unbelievable tradition there. And that just shows okay, they're playing in Omaha, but they're still going to do the beer shower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The fans are unbelievable. And, and we've fortunately been here, for a long time, and we've developed and grown a lot of different traditions and, cool experiences. And, it's what makes it, such a great, unique atmosphere being at Swayze Field. And it's one of a kind. And so, when you get 20,000 of them, in a stadium in Omaha, Nebraska, you can show the rest of the world, how cool Swayze Field can be.
Hey, when are you handing them the team book? When do they get it? When they
get it right before they go home for Christmas.
So right before.
So there's no excuses, right? You can't tell me what to do or, hey, and we do. We sit. Sometimes it gets difficult, because I read a lot, but I can't give them a 500-page book. It's got to have a message, and the right message for that year. And it's a lot of those types, and there's a lot of them now. Now that John Gordon has made it, kind of the cool thing to where you can pick up a lot of these different motivational self-help books that are easy reads, right? They're 130, a lot of different chapters, four pages in a new chapter, flip a page, boom, now I'm on page 12, but the kids eat them up, and I don't want them to listen to it on tape. I don't want them to I want them to read it.
I like the hard copy so you can take notes. Like and not every kid's going to do that, but just having the physical hard copy of the book that makes it more their own.
No doubt. And so they bring the book, when we come back, the first meeting, and we talk about it and ask them about their favorite, parts of the book, because, usually in those books, there's a different message each chapter. And it's great to hear their perspectives, to hear a Tim Elko or Justin Bench say, hey, my favorite part was this, and then I keep the book in my briefcase. So throughout, the season, you may be in week 7 and something happens during that weekend where, that's chapter, 6, in an energy bus. And, one of the lessons is whatever. And so, that's, another reason for the hard copy.
The guys that are coming into your program, what would you like to see them a little bit better at maybe than what they are, before they get to you?
I always say that, the most difficult thing for us, early on in the fall is can we get them to play with the same confidence as they played last year in high school or junior college? Can we, because for the first time in most of their lives, they step on the field and they're not the best player. And so they all batted third at their high school, or they all, were the ace. And, then they get here and they start looking around and they start thinking differently, and so they handle failure differently. So when they don't have a good batting practice, or they they're 0 for 3 in an inter squad game, for the first time in their life, they're going, wow, am I going to redshirt? Am I going to get cut? Am I going to not start? Am I going to, and they've never thought that way before. And that really slows down, their development. And some guys, it takes them, a semester to get through. Some guys, it takes them a couple of years, to get over that. And to be able to play with the confidence and the freedom that they did. That's why some guys they were 90 to 93 in high school as a pitcher, and they show up on campus and, they're 88 to 90. And they're healthy, they're fine. They're actually in better shape than they were, 4 months ago in high school. But they just don't throw it the same.
And volume of throwing too. I mean, that was the thing I always tried to relay to the incoming freshmen, especially, is like, hey, we're going to throw a lot more. So you might be in the weight room for the first time. There's a lot of different things going on here where you may kick back a little bit velocity wise. Don't worry about it. Like, you'll make that next jump.
Yeah. Well, all of the volume, it does, not just pitchers, but, for infielders and, everything that they're doing. And most of the kids are elite players, and they come in and they've played in elite high school programs and summer programs, and they've had hitting coaches and personal trainers, and they've had all that, and then they come here and get their butts kicked. They're like, wow, I thought I was working. And that's everybody, though. That's it's but what would you expect? I mean, I would hope that you're coming into a program that you're hoping that you said in the recruitment that you wanted us to develop you into a better player. Well, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten, right? We need to step it up. So you're going to take a lot more ground balls. You're going to throw the ball across the infield a lot more. You're going to hit, you're going to lift, you're going to do these things. And it's amazing where you watch them grow, where the first few weeks you see the freshmen and they're all like dying. And then all of a sudden you look at the sophomore that used to look like that, but some of that is just the mental pressure. So because when you're a freshman, you're dealing with a lot of unknowns. You don't know what the next day. And now when they're going over a bunt defense, you're trying not to screw it up. And so, your legs feel like 1,000 pounds because you're lifting and you're sore. But mentally, you're like, you don't want to screw it up, and you're trying to do these things. And so you're just beat. But when you come back as a sophomore, it's not that you're in that much better shape, but you're not as a sore because you're used to the weight room and you're used to the volume that it takes to be an Ole Miss baseball player. But then you also, the bunt defense, even if we put a new one on that you never heard, you're not stressed out. You know, you're not getting cut tomorrow, right? You know that this one day is not going to make or break you. And I think that's why some guys, it takes a while for them to get over the hump. So I guess my answer is yes, if we could just get them to take a deep breath and relax and just play, it's going to be okay. Nobody's going to be the starting shortstop on day one. Just relax and play, and you're smart enough, you're athletic enough, you're going to be great. Just allow yourself to be great.
And that's similar to the LSU staying in the same hotel, because now you know what to expect. Like that,
yeah.
It's slower for you because you know what to expect now. Like right. you know what to expect.
You're exactly right. Yeah. And I think that's what happens when they're a freshman. That's why we bring all the freshmen in the summer. Yeah. You know, they're here. This is their last week. They all leave on Friday, but that's why they're here. Yeah, we can't do anything baseball wise, and a lot of them, when you tell them that, they go, "What?" Like, but no, you don't get it. You're going to be in the weight room, so you're not going to be sore. Yes. In September, you're doing the running. You're going to be in better shape. You're hitting in the cages. You're in the dorm. You're meeting all your the kids that are in your class, but you're also meeting half of the returners. So when you step on campus, you're going to know 70% of the team. Where 15 years ago, they would walk in and they knew nobody. It was just them and their roommate that they met 2 hours ago. And now that first week, they got to go to weights. They got to go find their class. They got to go find study hall. They got to go find the cafeteria. They got to go find the bank. They got to go find a haircut. They got to find all these things for the first time. And so everybody talks about the incoming freshmen, not athletes, but the incoming freshman is the first semester is the most difficult for every
the first 2 weeks. Freshman. They're deer in headlights, and there's so many more people on campus once school starts.
Yeah, and so when you think about if that's the regular student that has all those stresses, now throw on that you're trying to be an elite baseball player and you're trying to throw a bullpen or you're trying to take batting practice, and now the volume that we just talked about and all the work, you're throwing that on top of it. No wonder they had a tough fall. I mean, and so coming into summertime, I think alleviates a lot of that.
What are some final thoughts?
Wow, I don't know. You tell me. We've talked a lot.
Hey, do you have a favorite baseball story? Do you have a favorite baseball story?
I hate that.
I mean, you don't have to. You have. I have so much respect for you. Just not just your career, but the people that you've been around. Like you have a very unique path. Not everybody has gotten to experience the things that you've gotten to experience in baseball. And I think sometimes those of us that grew up in the game, take that for granted, where, again, you don't have to, if you don't have a favorite one, because you've had a million along the way, it's hard to single any one of those out.
Yeah, be honest, Ryan, I'm blessed. I've been fortunate. And
you've also worked too, though. You need to give yourself more credit. You've worked your butt off.
We all work hard, and and I appreciate it. Thank you, but we all work hard. And some of us have been a little more fortunate than others. Heck, I didn't think it was going to take 22 years to win a national championship. I worked for a guy that made it look very easy. He won 5 in 10 years, and I thought, hey, I'd get my SEC job, and I'll win my 5 in 10 years. I got this system, right? I got the book and the stories, and I'll just plug it all in. And he made it look so easy. It's not that easy. And so, we have worked hard. I'm proud of our guys. I'm proud, obviously, of the players, but not just this team. All the guys that have ever worn the uniform. Somebody asked me that the other day, and that's one of the things they say, hey, the first 15 minutes, after the final out, what were you thinking about? And that was one of the things. This wasn't easy. And it was much harder than I thought it would be. And we've had a lot of great teams. We've had some teams that were probably better than this team. Yeah. And we've had some teams, I'm talking about physically. Yes. And unfortunately, it didn't work for them, and it wasn't like we did anything different. It wasn't like, oh, God, this is the secret recipe. We forgot this. If we do this, we win. It worked for this team, and we played really well when it mattered and won it all. But so I'm proud of this team, but I'm proud of all the guys that have ever worn the uniform. And I mean it sincerely. The championship, it's the 2022 national championship, but the 21 years prior to that, the guys that wore the uniform have made this possible. And some tough losses along the way, and those guys wore those losses, and so everybody deserves a piece of this. But then also a coaching staff, as you mentioned, that especially Clem and Laugh that have been here. Clem's been here for what, 8 years now? No, maybe 10 years. He came in 2015, 9 years maybe. Anyway, guys that have the blood, sweat, and tears that put a lot of time and effort, and to see it, the culmination of that's pretty cool.
I'm happy for you, Coach. I'm pumped for you. So thanks for your time.
Appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you.